All right, let's talk about something huge, a topic that feels like it's been debated forever, the supposed epic war between science and faith.
Hola, I'm Agustin, and welcome to Apologetic Analysis. This is where we try to give some really clear answers to the big questions and doubts that can come up about our Catholic faith. And today, we're jumping right into one of the biggest, the real story behind science and faith. So, how are we going to do this? Here's our game plan. First, we'll look at this popular idea of an eternal war. Then, and this is so important, we're going to define what we're actually talking about. After that, we'll dive into the history books. And yes, we'll take a hard look at the Galileo case. Finally, we'll explore this really beautiful Catholic vision of how it all fits together.
Okay, so let's start with the story we all kind of know, right? It's this great drama. You've got science, the hero, pushing us forward with reason and progress, and then you have faith, the villain, always trying to hold us back in the dark. It's a great story, but is it true?
This whole idea has a name. It's called the conflict thesis, and you see it everywhere. In movies, on the internet, you name it. It's the default assumption for a lot of people. But what we gotta ask is, does this narrative actually match up with the facts? Is it real history, or is it more of a myth that's just been told over and over again?
Now, before we go any further, we have to pause and get our words straight. Honestly, so much of this debate is just noise because people are using the same words but meaning totally different things. If we want a clear answer, we absolutely have to be precise.
And here is the single most important distinction we have to make. On one side, you have science. Science is a method. It's a fantastic tool we use to look at the world and ask, how does this work? But on the other side, you have something called scientism. And that's not science, it's a philosophy. It's a belief system that says science is the only way to find truth about anything. And it can answer every why question, not just the how.
And here's the kicker. Scientism itself is a philosophical belief, not a scientific discovery. You can't prove in a lab that only the scientific method can prove things. See the problem? It's a claim about reality that, ironically, can't be proven by its own standard. It's a worldview, plain and simple.
Okay, so keeping that difference between science and scientism in mind, let's look at the actual history. I mean, if the conflict story were true, you'd expect to see the church constantly stamping out science, right? But when you open the books, you find a story that's, well, a whole lot more interesting than that.
Just take a look at these guys. We're not talking about small-time players. These are absolute giants. You've got Copernicus, a canon in the church who turned our view of the universe upside down. You've got Gregor Mendel, a monk who is literally called the father of genetics. And then there's Georges Lemaitre, a Catholic priest who first came up with the idea of a primeval atom, what we now call the Big Bang. For them, faith and science weren't enemies, they were partners.
And it wasn't just individuals. The church as a whole was a massive force for knowledge. I mean, who founded the first universities in Europe? The church. For centuries, where were ancient Greek and Roman scientific texts saved from being lost forever? In monasteries. And this isn't just ancient history. Today, the church actively funds top-tier research through places like the Vatican Observatory.
But I can hear you thinking, okay, Augustine, that's great. But what about Galileo? It's the one story everyone knows. It's supposed to be the ultimate proof of the conflict. But when you look at what actually happened, not the legend, you see it's way, way more complicated.
You see, this whole thing didn't happen overnight. It was a drama that played out over decades. Back in 1616, the church didn't say the sun-centered model was wrong. It said, hey, don't teach this as a proven fact until you actually have the proof. The big blow-up came 16 years later in 1632, when Galileo published a book that really offended some very powerful people, which then led to his trial.
So what was it really about? Historians now see it as a perfect storm. The science, believe it or not, wasn't fully proven yet. There were huge personalities and egos involved. Galileo was a genius, but he knew how to pick a fight. There were political games being played. And it wasn't just faith versus science. It was a new scientific idea clashing with the old scientific idea that everyone accepted. It was messy, it was a tragedy, but it just wasn't as simple as faith versus reason.
So if it's not a war, what is it? What's the real relationship? Well, the Catholic Church offers a totally different picture. Not a conflict, but a partnership. a vision where the two actually need each other.
It all comes down to this one powerful idea. Truth cannot contradict truth. Think about it. If you believe God is the author of everything, then He's the source of the truth we find in nature, that's science, and the truth we find in revelation, that's faith. Since they both come from the same source, they can't ultimately be in conflict. If they seem to be, it just means we don't have the full picture yet.
And I don't think anyone has ever said it better than St. John Paul II. Faith and reason are like two wings. It's such a perfect image. They're not fighting each other. They're the two things you need to actually get off the ground. If you try to fly with just one wing, whether it's only reason or only faith, you're just going to spin around in circles. You need both to soar towards the truth.
So let's just drop the whole tired, boring war story. When we reframe this as a partnership, we can stop having the same old arguments and start having a much more interesting conversation. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If truth can't contradict truth, and these are two wings searching for it, what incredible new questions can we start asking together?
Thank you so much for joining me for this apologetic analysis. As we all try to seek the truth with both our faith and our reason, I want to invite you to join us in prayer. You can pray the Holy Rosary with us every single day in both Spanish and English on our YouTube channel, Custodios del Rosario. Thanks again for being here.